it coming in?
Yes.
Surprised to see the tanks. They're quite huge, and we were given a warm welcome by all the staff.
Thank- Okay, so that was a very small video about what we do and what we are. And so just now to start, so basically I'll just talk a little bit about what is Masai Mara in Kenya and about the wildlife here, and then about the different conservation activities that we basically participate here. So I'm sure many of you would have heard of Masai Mara. So it's arguably the most famous wildlife park in Africa and perhaps the world. So it has been winner of the best safari park for the last many years from World Tourism Council. So typically it's the most famous for the Great Migration, which is a annual phenomena, but during July to October, it is millions of wildebeests and zebras that cross the Mara River and the Talek River here. That creates quite a bit of drama and basically attracts guests from all over the world. And apart from the Great Migration, it's perhaps the best place to see the big cats like your lions, leopards, cheetahs, and also other animals like your elephant, giraffe, rhino, hippo, all these things. So it's about 1500 square kilometer of area, which is the national reserve, which is basically the government controlled part. And about equal area is split into different private conservancies, which are basically private concessions, which are owned by the local community and different people locally, and where they run different kinds of properties as well. Now, what I will try to do is I'll try to show a map of Masai Mara and just try to point out a few things. So just I'm sharing my screen again. Just a sec. Yeah. Mm,
Uh,
can you see my screen now?
and no, yeah. And if you can increase your voice of your laptop, because someone maybe not been able to
Okay,
hear.
sure. Entire Serengeti in Tanzania. So the green area which you see, where basically I'm moving my mouse. So that's the Masai Mara National Reserve along with the Mara Triangle. And the ones which you see in lightish color, grayish color, those are the different private conservancies. So now the line you see within the National Reserve, that's basically the Mara River, the one on the left. And the line on the right, which is basically splitting it, that's the Talek River. So during the Great Migration, what happens in January or February at southern Serengeti at a place called Dutu, they give birth in millions, and then slowly they start moving northwards in search of food and water all through the year. Now, by the time June and July comes, they enter into Masai Mara, typically through the Sand River, and from there they will typically cross this Mara River, the line you see in the middle, and then Talek River. So that's where all the drama comes. If I have to show longer together. So now, during this time, what happens? You typically see a lot of predator action, like lions hunting, these crocodiles hunting in water, and it's quite a sight to behold. And even during then after typically September or October, they start moving back towards Serengeti, and around that time, the crowds, basically the herds move towards north part of Serengeti and followed by central Serengeti. Now, in terms of the wildlife or the ecosystem, so Mara or the entire Mara Serengeti ecosystem is typically a savanna ecosystem. Now, at the banks of the rivers, you typically find more bushy areas and the trees. And most of the parks are typically grasslands, but also in Serengeti and few parts of Mara, you also see a few what you can call basically hills, small hills. So that's the kind of the terrain here. And typically, so primarily, if we talk of the predator species, so it is the lion, leopard, and the cheetah that survive. But all of them survive very differently and also hunt very differently. So if I have to talk of lions, so they typically stay in a pride. So their typical hunting mode is a pride hunting. So they will typically make a strategy, hunt together, and make the kill. And if I talk of a leopard, they are typically very much ambush hunters. And they mostly like to stay on the trees because they need to save their prey from lions and hyenas. And they typically, whenever they see the opportunity, they will pounce on a prey. And both lions and leopards, they can also hunt in night, and rather they hunt more in the night. But cheetahs are quite different. So cheetahs typically, because they're the smallest of the three, they go for the smaller prey like gazelles and all, and they'll typically chase a prey. They will not typically stalk and pounce. They will typically chase a prey like a gazelle or impala, and then they typically eat fresh. So whenever they kill, they will typically eat it at once and then just go away. And they always, invariably, they will hunt during the daytime. Now, one of the programs I wish to talk about, so which we run here, is the Mara Predator Conservation Program. So where primarily they focus on conservation of cheetahs and also on lions and leopards. So just to basically give a very high level overview of the things which we do here. So they typically like there are about 70 80 odd cheetahs in the entire 1500 square kilometer national reserve. And even though it is threatened everywhere, but Mara is still the best place in Africa to see them. Now, how the local government, in collaboration with entities like WWF and few others, researchers, so who are basically independent entities, or they are often foreigners or come from different institutions, and they basically form together they form a multidisciplinary team, and they would typically follow the program and what are the findings, like is it mating, which areas is it going, how is it hunting, or is it threatened by some other animal, how are the cubs surviving, um, is there any kind of, say, human conflict. So there are multiple data points that they need to record, and basically at the end of a month or typically a quarter, there are reviews that happen. We have to try to figure out that what is happening, what is going wrong, what are the corrective measures we need to take. So fundamentally, one thing about conservation is that we closely follow what is happening in the wild, but as much as possible, we try not to interfere, which is actually counterintuitive. So the rule is that these are wild animals and they are suited to survive in the wild, and they should survive that way. So while we collect our data for our research purposes, for our future, if we need to make any changes, but as much as possible, we will never interfere. But the only times park will interfere in case some animal is facing a severe food shortage. Only in the eventuality it is almost going to be dead, not before that. Or say the cubs are very small. This particularly happens with cheetahs. If there are say 15-day-old cub or 10-day-old cubs, they can be threatened by lions or leopards. So during those days, the surveillance is little more. While the cubs are still not taken into, I mean, they are not given any artificial protection. but at least there is a ranger team around and they try to follow what they're doing, and as much as possible try to shield them without really interfering with them. So that's broadly how the cheetah conservation program here works. Now, in extreme cases, some animals are rehabilitated. That would be typically if it gets injured where it's not able to hunt. So, one very important thing when it comes to the predator conservation program, um, say the reason why they would not take, say, a 10-day or 20-day cheetah cub into, say, a safe custody like an enclosure and basically feed them. If a big cat does not learn to hunt in the first 6 months of its life, it will never learn. So, if it's grown in an enclosure or in a closed area for the first 6 months or 1 year, it will never survive in the wild. So, that is all the more reason that they need to be left alone in the wild. But at the same time, what they try is to basically gather as much data as possible. And in case there is any imminent threat which they can shield them from, they try to do that. So, just to give an example, recently there was a almost 16-year-old male lion just near our camp called Lolar Puppet. So it was almost about to die. So the last couple of meals they had fed him a little bit, but after that left him and it died naturally because that is the rule of the nature. But at the same time, if an animal gets injured, say there is a leg injury or anything, because these big cats also have frequent territorial fights. So in such cases, they typically they have a veterinary doctor. They will treat it for a day or two, and they will again release it back in the wild, which basically increases the mortality rate. Now, for a species like lion, so a typically accepted basically density is about 5.4 per square kilometer for a typical lion, single lion in a pride. Now, Mara is facing a problem that it is already over dense. So in Mara, that number is almost 2.6 per square kilometer. So that is all the more reason there are frequent fights between dominant males and sometimes between prides. But at the same time, the good thing is nature takes its own path and they typically settle between them. And basically, it's, as you know, the Darwin's theory, the survival of the fittest. So typically, the strongest guy survives. And even in lions, the rule is that once the male cubs are about 2 months old, sorry, 2 years old, they are typically thrown out of their pride and they then roam around the park as nomads and they try to take over existing pride where they will try to basically defeat the existing male. So that's the rule of uh, how a lion family or the entire lion ecosystem works. So there again, as conservationists, we have nothing much to do apart from observing them, and also, so one more fundamental role in the predator conservation program is also avoiding the man-human conflicts, man-animal conflicts. Sorry. So the grazing grounds of the local Masais in the 60s, 70s, and all. Then later on, these were declared as national reserves and national parks, and that is around the time when all these protection measures started coming into place, and all the villagers, which are basically the local Masais, they were rehabilitated to the local villages surrounding the park. So which has happened successfully. But even in the last 2 3 decades or so, there have been villagers who come to graze their cattle in the park and all. So in the last 5 or 10 years, that is almost nearly zero. But still, in the private conservancies, they have some arrangement. They still go to graze their cattle. So particularly, if you note Gorongoro crater and Serengeti in Tanzania, so the arrangement with the locals is that in Gorongoro they can graze their cattle, but the Serengeti has been declared a national park. So in Serengeti, you will never see a single cattle of the local Maasais. So similarly here in the conservancies, there are some cattle, but in the national reserves, you will typically not see them. So apart from the natural fights and the natural protection of the animals, the another fundamental pillar is basically trying to see that all kinds of man-animal conflicts are avoided. So broadly, this is the story about the predator conservation program. So the way we help is basically sometimes through our clients, agents, and different sponsors. We try to raise some funds for the rangers who work on the field. Children, because these government and typically not paid that well, and some are even not on a full-time contract, so they don't have a certainty of income. So we try to help them in whatever ways possible, and also we some required. So in case you would like to join in one of these programs, I'll be more than happy to coordinate. And then the second one we work very closely with is the rhino conservation program, which is basically the black rhino. So Mara has about 36 black rhino surviving in the park, while Kenya or Africa as a whole has a lot more. While the black rhino is still threatened species, but overall in a country like Kenya, it's doing well. Particularly parks like Lake Nakuru, Olpejeta, they have done a great job of rhino conservation. And even the last surviving northern rhino is in a park called Olpejeta. Now in Mara, because the population is low, the tracking is basically more vigorous. So there is an entire team for this rhino management, and there is a ranger allocated to each individual rhino who tracks them, tracks their movement. In case there is any infighting or basically attack by lions or anything happens, that is immediately reported. And much more than big cats, they are treated in case of any medical emergency or any kind of ill health. And also one of the key basically key areas of this program is to ensure that at least the males and females they breed together, and at least the basically after 2 generations a healthy population is reached in a place like Mara. So today if you look at a place like Serengeti, while there are rhinos, but it is nearly impossible to see one. In Mara it is still something like in a week or 2 weeks tourists typically get to see. But then in places like Lake Nakuru or Gorongoro Reserve in Tanzania, the rhinos are much more frequent. So the entire objective is basically to increase the healthy population here. And also for the last many years, there is a talk for making a rhino reserve, which will be basically kind of a rhino breeding center. So in Kenya, how it happens, so KWS, which is the Kenya Wildlife Service, they are the primary central authority on the wildlife. At the same time, a place like Masai Mara National Reserve that's controlled by the local county government, which is the Narok County. So they work in a collaboration, and all these different conservation initiatives, there are different multidisciplinary teams that work together. So these are the two of the main conservation programs that Kenya has done. Now, apart from that, I would like to talk about few of the environmental initiatives that Kenya as a country has taken, and how they are doing a really wonderful job of ecotourism. So all of this, I would say, I learned more since we acquired this camp in Masai Mara. Because before that, I still used to go as a travel company or a photography tour leader, but not I was not aware of the local environmental laws to that extent. So the beautiful thing that they have done, while in a place like Masai Mara, they have allocated about 40-45 sites for different tented camps. We are one of them, and perhaps one of the best located actually. But there are so there is an organization called NEMA, which is the National Environmental Management Authority, which basically controls everything that you do to the environment. So in a tented camp or any lodge like us within the national parks, so the rule is that you cannot basically dispose even a drop of waste to the environment, whether it is the river or the land. So all kinds of solid or liquid waste that the property generates. So we have to install basically in-house waste treatment and disposal machines, and everything has to be treated. So all the solid waste basically becomes compost, which is then left in the forest or which is basically disposed to the nearest town. And then all the liquid waste, we have to basically treat it and make it into a clean water, and which is then used in the washroom or which can be also disposed in the river, but only after cleaning the water completely. So the basic philosophy here is that you cannot leave a trace of basically human tourism on the local environment. So if you remember the drone photo of the property I showed, so I will just try to show some of our pictures, how we look like from the sky and how the place looks like. So you will figure out that most of it, like 95%, is retained as a natural forest. So the only the forest, and wherever we have made a tent, so only that much area we have used. And there is the river flowing next to us, which is the Olareorok River. Now, while at a place like this, the tents are very comfortable. You have all kinds of amenities. This would be a typical tent. But here the main mantra is to keep. So this is the river basically next to us. So as you can see, next to the rivers, you have these bushy areas where typically they allot places for the camps. And now actually they have brought this Mara management plan where they're not even allocating any new sites. So whatever is done, that is done. So the good part is while you stay right within the national reserve, but the basic amenities, everything is world class. And at the same time, you are not damaging the environment, even an iota of it. So that's the best thing that they have done to it. And even as you could just hear some sound of a plane. So we have 3 different airstrips within the Mara. So there are these small 8-seater planes that can basically take you from Nairobi. So even the convenience and all those factors have been taken care very nicely. So this is a typical river. This is the river next to us, which is the Olareorok River. So this is a typical Mara scenery where the balanite tree and the you would see in the internet. So this is a typical Land Cruiser and how the safaris happen here. Now the local staff, most of them are basically okay. So one more, the good part about the tourism here, while we are mandated, but we also voluntarily try to employ as many locals as possible. So most of the staff, at least the lower level staff, they are all the local people who are trained up very nicely. And also where Kenya has done a wonderful job. So after 10th or 12th in the school, they have these tourism training colleges where a good 30 to 40% of the children are trained for 1 or 2 years. So they are trained in all kinds of hospitality things like room service, restaurant, and different functions, and also basic English and guest handling skills. So the staff we get even from the local villages, ones who are trained in this tourism training colleges, they are actually pretty well trained and they are usable in even a luxury hotel setup. So one more experience which the guests have here is basically visiting the local villages. So where the local people they talk about their culture. Um, the typical lion pride. This is the one next to us. We call it the Olgatuni pride. So this was 1.5 years back. There was a zebra which had some kind of a skin defect. It was called Tira. It had a polka dotted kind of a effect. So it died after 3 4 months. But this was actually one of the what do you call, the rarest natural phenomena that occurred anywhere in Africa. This is a typical cheetah. So this is the famous five brothers. These are four of them. So this is a coalition of five cheetahs where two are from Kenya and three have come from Tanzania. So this would be a typical male lion. So this is how the typical grassland habitat looks like. This would be a lion's mating. That's again the habitat with the male lion. So okay, so about hippos. So hippos typically stay mostly in the water. So they typically have a very high body temperature, so they need to cool that. And only during the night they come out in the open to eat grass and all that. And also they are very territorial. So most of the times when you are at the river, you will often see male hippos fighting over territory and opening their mouths like this. So this is a serval cat. So this is one of the small cats. It hunts typically rodents, birds, and very small hares and smaller animals. This is a brown, but this is striped hyena. So brown hyena you find only in southern parts of Africa, not here. So this is during a typical migration scene when you have wildebeest basically just crossed the river and it got trapped between two lionesses. This is a species of kingfisher. I think the balanite kingfisher, malachite kingfisher, which you find typically along the rivers. And these are ostriches. So if you're a photographer, Mara is also a great place to make very nice silhouette images or images of big cats, images of hunting. Perhaps it's perhaps in the most favorite place for wildlife photographers. So actually, while we get regular tourists who want to see the wildlife, big five, and everything, but also a big, almost who's who of the world's wildlife photography, they come to Mara because the ease and the access which you have to the wildlife here is even not matched by Serengeti, Kruger, or any other park. And they have a wonderful concept for wildlife photographers, which is called the off-roading permit. So where basically, if you see something, say 100 meters from the safari track, your vehicle can just go there and you can get close-ups of the way you want your shots. But at the same time, there are strict regulations about, there should not be any kind of animal harassment or any kind of disturbance to the environment. So these kind of permits are also very limited. So these are typical cheetah territories. So these are cheetahs trying to prevent their food from hyenas. So this is a classic Mara kind of a frame. So where you have this balanite trees and a predator touching it. So this one is just next to our camp. So the beauty of staying inside the park is that you can basically see property. So just sometimes even at our gates there are land prides or sometimes a leopard called Bahati. So you really don't need to travel. So within a 3 kilometer radius, you can see different land prides, leopards, cheetah families, hippos. So that's the best part what they have done for the ecotourism. So basically you pay the premium of staying inside the park, but you also get to see everything at a very close distance. So I'm just quickly browsing through some of the shots here. So this is a black rhino. So this is our resident, almost resident leopard called Bahati with a daughter. So this one sometimes stays just in the periphery of our place. So in lion prides, typically we'll see the cubs playing and cuddling with the mothers. So this is a classic cheetah hunt. So this is one of the five brothers. So they typically one of them catches a big prey, then the others join in to bring down the prey. So this is again a leopard with a cub playing together. So these are one of the silhouettes you can make towards the evenings. So this is a southern ground hornbill. So Mara, apart from the basically the mammals and the big cats, it's also very good for birds. So there are over 330 species of birds that have been recorded, and in a typical 5 to 7 day tour, you can expect to see at least 30 to 40 different species. And the grasslands and the treetops, they actually make for great photography opportunities for the birds. So this is a typical leopard hunt. Actually, I can show you some more leopard hunt pictures here. So this was in last September. So just after the migration, so when these wildebeest typically cross these small streams, so lions or single leopards, they look for them and catch one of them. And then this is a typical cheetah hunt where they kill by the coalition. So here they have caught a wildebeest. Now, yeah. So this is a basically a topi kill. So where one has caught a topi. Now there are other moments like say a leopard climbing up and down the tree like this. Then if you are a photographer in a place like Mara, you can make creative frames like playing with the light very early morning or late evening. So this is a ostrich very, very early in the morning, just when sun had come out. Then also one great thing about Mara is basically the balloon safari. So from balloon, you can see things in a different perspective. Not only wildlife, but the entire park. So it's typically in the morning, it's a 1 hour ride where you glide over the park in a small hot air balloon, and it's followed by a champagne breakfast. So this is a set of hippos which I got from the balloon. So it continued for almost 1 hour, and they gave quite a bit of interesting shots. So these are some like this is a panning effect where a zebra is running during the migration. Now during migration, you also get to see some really gory scenes. Uh, so like this is a crocodile which has rolled a zebra and then the blood is spilling out. And also one of the best things about a place like Mara or even Serengeti is the sunsets. So this is a classic Mara sunset where the sun is just going down the or a balanite tree against the sun. Now, also early in the mornings, you typically see these small young lions cuddling each other and playing, and this would be a mating couple. Then in elephants, you typically see these kind of trunk fights. And this, I think I showed, this is one of the bigger crossings in Mara. So yeah, so that almost brings me to the end